There was a time in my life when I believed I already knew how strong I was. I had faced difficult days before. I had survived disappointments, watched opportunities disappear, and learned how to smile even when things were not going the way I wanted. I thought I understood struggle. I thought I understood patience. I thought I knew what it meant to keep moving forward when life became difficult. But I was wrong. Life had a lesson waiting for me that I could never have imagined. It began on an ordinary morning. Nothing about that day looked special. The sky was bright, people were busy with their routines, and I was carrying the same worries I had carried for months. I had dreams, but they seemed too far away. I had plans, but every plan appeared to have another obstacle standing in front of it. I remember looking at myself and asking a simple question: how much longer can I keep doing this? I didn't have an answer. For a long time, I had believed that strength meant never falling. I thought strong people were those who never cried, never became afraid, never doubted themselves, and never admitted that they were tired. Then life showed me something completely different. Strength is not about never falling. Strength is about getting back up when you have every reason to stay down. At that point in my life, I felt as though everything was becoming smaller. My confidence was smaller. My hopes were smaller. Even my dreams had become smaller because I was afraid of being disappointed again. Instead of asking, what could I achieve? I had started asking, what is the safest thing I can do? That question quietly changed my life. One evening, after another disappointing day, I sat alone and looked at everything I had accomplished so far. There wasn't much that I could proudly point to. I compared myself with other people and felt as though everyone was moving forward while I was standing in the same place. Some people had better jobs. Some had bigger houses. Some had more money. Some seemed happier. And some had achieved in a few years what I had spent years trying to accomplish. I felt behind. But then I realized something important. I was comparing my entire life to someone else's best moments. I couldn't see their struggles. I couldn't see their failures. I couldn't see the nights they cried, the opportunities they lost, or the moments when they also wanted to give up. I only saw the results. That night, I made a decision. I would stop measuring my life against other people. I would measure it against the person I had been yesterday. The next morning, I started with something incredibly small. I woke up earlier. I worked a little harder. I complained a little less. I learned something new. And when I failed, I tried again. Nothing dramatic happened at first. There was no miracle. No sudden success. No one came running to tell me that my life had changed. But something inside me had changed. For the first time in a long time, I was moving. Slowly, but moving. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. And the small things began to add up. I discovered that progress doesn't always make noise. Sometimes progress looks like waking up when you don't feel motivated. Sometimes it looks like continuing when nobody believes in you. Sometimes it means saying no to temporary comfort because you are building something for your future. And sometimes progress is simply refusing to quit. Then came the hardest moment. Just when I thought things were finally beginning to improve, something happened that completely destroyed the confidence I had built. An opportunity one had worked incredibly hard for disappeared. I had invested time, energy, hope, and sacrifice into it. And suddenly, it was gone. I felt like I had returned to the beginning. For a few days, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to stop. I wanted to believe that maybe my dreams were not meant for me. Maybe I wasn't talented enough. Maybe I wasn't lucky enough. Maybe some people were simply born to succeed while others were born to struggle. But then I remembered something. I had already survived every difficult day that had come before that moment. Every disappointment. Every rejection. Every failure. Every night when I thought I couldn't continue. I had survived all of them. So why should this moment be different? That question became my turning point. I stopped asking, why is this happening to me? I started asking, what can this teach me? That change in thinking made me stronger. I learned that failure wasn't always the opposite of success. Sometimes failure was the road leading toward it. I began again. This time, I was different. I wasn't working because I wanted people to admire me. I wasn't trying to prove that I was better than anyone else. I was working because I had discovered something more important. I wanted to prove to myself that I could become the person I had always hoped to be. The journey was still difficult. There were mornings when I was tired. There were nights when fear returned. There were moments when I questioned everything. But now I knew something I hadn't known before. Fear doesn't mean you should stop. Doubt doesn't mean you are incapable. Being tired doesn't mean you have failed. Sometimes it simply means you are human. So I kept going. One step. Then another. Then another. Eventually, the results began to appear. The same things that once seemed impossible started becoming possible. The goals that once looked too big became smaller because I had grown bigger. And that was the secret I had been missing. My life hadn't suddenly become easier. I had become stronger. The mountain hadn't become shorter. I had learned how to climb. The problems hadn't disappeared. I had learned how to face them. And one day, I looked back at the person I had been years earlier. I almost didn't recognize him. That person was afraid of failure. I had learned to accept failure. That person needed everyone to believe in him. I had learned to believe in myself. That person thought strength meant never breaking. I had learned that sometimes breaking is how we discover what we are truly made of. And then something happened that I will never forget. I achieved something I once believed was completely beyond my reach. I stood there quietly, looking at what I had accomplished. There was no crowd. There were no cameras. There was no dramatic music. Just me, standing in a moment I had dreamed about for so long. And instead of feeling proud, I felt grateful. Grateful for every rejection. Grateful for every difficult morning. Grateful for every person who doubted me. Grateful even for the failures. Because without them, I would never have become the person standing there. I finally understood that sometimes life takes something away from us because it is preparing us for something greater. Sometimes a closed door is not punishment. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes rejection is redirection. Sometimes the delay is preparing you for an opportunity you are not ready for yet. And sometimes the person you become during the struggle is far more valuable than the thing you were originally trying to achieve. Today, when I face a difficult moment, I remember where I came from. I remember the days when I thought I couldn't continue. I remember the nights when I had no idea what the future would look like. And I remind myself that the future doesn't require me to know everything. It only requires me to take the next step. That's what I want you to remember too. Maybe you're watching this while going through the hardest chapter of your life. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you failed. Maybe someone told you that your dream was impossible. Maybe you feel like everyone else is moving forward while you're standing still. Please don't make the mistake of believing that your current situation is the final version of your life. It isn't. You may be stronger than you think. You may be closer than you realize. And the struggle you are experiencing today may be building the strength you will need tomorrow. Don't give up just because the results haven't arrived yet. A seed doesn't look like a tree. A beginning doesn't look like a success. And a person at the start of a journey cannot always imagine who they will become at the end. I couldn't imagine it either. I once thought my limitations defined me. Now I understand that they were simply challenges waiting to be overcome. I thought I needed a bigger opportunity. What I really needed was a bigger belief in myself. I thought I needed an easier life. What I really needed was a stronger heart. I thought success would change me. Instead, the struggle changed me first. And perhaps that is the most beautiful part of the journey. You don't become stronger after the storm. You become stronger because you survived it. You don't become fearless because life becomes easy. You become courageous because you continue despite the fear. And you don't become successful because you never fail. You become successful because failure doesn't get the final word. So if you are standing at the beginning of your own journey, don't worry if the road looks long. Take the first step. If you have fallen, stand up. If you have failed, learn. If someone has rejected you, keep building. If you feel lost, keep searching. And if you are tired, rest, but don't surrender. One day, you may look back and realize that the chapter you wanted to escape was the chapter that made you stronger. You may discover that the life you once thought was impossible became your reality. You may stand somewhere you once dreamed of reaching and realize that you have become stronger, bigger, and far beyond anything you ever imagined. And when that day comes, you will understand something I finally learned. The greatest victory wasn't reaching the destination. The greatest victory was becoming the person who refused to stop walking. So keep going. Your story isn't over. In fact, it may only be beginning.